Welcome to the Long Island Sound Podcast, where we explore the muse and the music, from the North Shore to the South Shore, from New York City to the Hamptons, navigating the wellspring of original music from singer-songwriters and musicians from Long Island, New York. Hi, I'm Steve Yusko from GigDestiny.com. Stay tuned as we explore the Long Island Sound. It is difficult to get noticed in the music business. Many things have changed over the years. But when you come across a musician who's an artist, true to their craft and creativity, you're in for something special. Our fantastic guest today is a producer, engineer, composer, arranger, and artist. Nelson Montana is hard to pin down to any narrow genre. From concert halls to studio work to Broadway plays, there's much to unpack. Let's listen to what's ahead in this episode of the Long Island Sound. Hey, the dictionary defines eclectic as deriving ideas, style, or taste from a broad, diverse range of sources. You know, this came to my mind in researching today's guest. He's an arranger, composer, bassist, multi-instrumentalist, vocalist, producer, engineer. Man, that's a mouthful. He traveled many musical roads from rock to jazz to funk and country. He's been featured in both Modern Drummer magazine and Bass Player magazine. And recently, he's also featured in the new book, From the Record, along music industry legends Robin Gibb, Neil Sedaka, and Kelly Rowland. I've got a feeling there's plenty to learn from Nelson Montana. Welcome to the Long Island Sound podcast, Nelson. Good to see you. Thanks for being here.
Hi, Steve. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
I got to tell my audience, I've spoken to many interesting musicians. You could be, and I said this to your friend Joe Pickett, who referred me to you. I said, Joe, you've got such a background. You could be 3 episodes. And not to be in competition. You could be 10 episodes because you've got.
All right, well, let's do 9 more then.
Let's do 9 more. We'll see how this goes. But it's really interesting. So we just heard one of your songs. We're going to play a couple of your original tunes. But what really kind of strikes me is the environment that you grew up in, and when did you pick up an instrument? What kind of influences do you have with family? I'm always curious about it because it's always different from person to person.
It is different for everyone. I was interested in music very young, but I was a bit of a late starter and a late bloomer. I begged my parents for a guitar when I was about 12 years old. My brother got piano lessons, but this was sort of that generation where the older child gets all the benefits.
I'm with you. I'm
right,
with you.
And then
happened to me.
Yeah, and the rest get the hand-me-downs. So he played piano and had really no interest in it, and I wanted to play guitar. So eventually, what happened was I'm very interested in fitness. I did that for a while, and I started very young, and I was helped training some people when I was a young man. And one of the kids had a drum set, and I just got behind it, and I said, I want to do this.
Oh, wow.
And, my parents were going through a divorce, and I think it was a good chance for my mom to say, like, here you go, do this. Keep yourself busy.
Annoy the crap out of your dad. Yeah.
Well, once he was gone and she wanted to go live her life, it was like,
Right.
okay, you have something to do. And that was it. I just decided right then and there. I was never really great at school. I was never really good at sports. And I thought that this is something I'm just going to be as the best I can be.
It's funny you say that about older siblings. I got roped into my sister. We come from a Polish family. Mom was Polish, and so she tried to coerce my sister to play the accordion. So she could play at dances, and she's like, God, she did that for like 2 weeks, and then it was piano, and it's like, okay, let's split the piano lesson between you and your sister. You each get a half hour, so we get the most bang for your buck. It was the most awkward thing, and I felt so tolerable for my piano teacher because it was just horrible. I had to sit and listen to my sister play, and I was like, it was torturous. It was torturous.
Well, I think a lot of I've known obviously thousands of musicians, and so many of them have parents who are either in the field, in the business, they had some background. That's a tremendous advantage. If your parents aren't coming from that, if they're just working folk, they really wouldn't know what to do. An instrument is just a toy to them, especially back then. You don't make money from it.
Right. It's a distraction. Yeah.
It's just a distraction. It's just a hobby. And but for me, I felt like that was my calling. I was actually I was an art major, and I was going to. I thought that's what I would wind up doing. But once the music came in, that was it for me. I just fell in love with it.
Wow. Now, where'd you grow up, if you don't mind me?
Born in Brooklyn, grew up on Long Island.
Okay.
Always wanted to live in Manhattan, and then once my son went to college, that's what I did. I moved to Manhattan. I've been there ever since.
That's great. Yeah, I actually have friends of mine who moved from Long Island into Manhattan. It's good to be in a real active area. Now my daughter's looking to move into Brooklyn because that's the coolest place on earth.
That's
now.
The new Manhattan. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the coolest place on earth. So mom and dad musicians. Any other siblings?
No. It's funny. You learn, as I'm sure you realize, as you get older in life, you realize the traits you picked up from your parents. And I know that I picked up some of my traits, which has helped me in my music, but neither one of them were musical.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So,
how did it kick? So I'm jumping on your words. So I apologize.
Go ahead.
So you find this drum set, right? And you go, wow, this is it. You get the itch, and there you are in the drums. Where did it progress from there as far as getting out in front of people or getting in a band, and how old were you, that sort of thing? You said you started
Well,
late, so
I
what is?
started late. Well, I'm 15, which is considered late.
Yeah.
Um, I got good quick. So
Okay.
I just started joining bands, whatever bands I could play with. It was a very different vibe back then. I mean, I don't want to take my perspective and enforce that on young people, but I do think it is a different world for them right now. I mean, back then, I've often said that music in general was far more precious
Mm.
because, well, you couldn't get now all music is available for free. So it's back
Well, yeah,
then,
yeah.
you bought that album and you cherished it and you listened to it 1,000 times and you had your friends check it out and maybe you recorded for them. So, getting into music, every club needed bands. And I knew that if I got good enough where I could get into a band, I could start making money at it. But I quickly wanted to sort of go beyond that. I didn't want to just, some guys, they just want to be in that bar band and get the girls and make a few bucks, and that's great.
Sure.
But I was always thinking beyond that. I always wanted to do
Well,
more.
you bring up a good topic because music is everywhere. As far as one, you don't get paid for music unless you get it on the soundtrack,
Not anymore, no.
or if you're playing live and getting paid to do that. But yeah, I had the same experience as well, where I had older sisters, so you grab their albums when they didn't lock the bedroom, and you'd really get into it. I'm telling you, if you played it twice, you played it 30 times, and
Yeah.
it really got in your head. Maybe because you didn't really have any other choices,
And made choice, and the music was made for people to make that an experience. You sat down, you listened to it, you absorbed it. Now, I mean, I find myself, I do it myself, where my attention span has shortened. I'll put
Yeah.
something on for a few seconds, and what's next? And there's always some more. When you only have those handful of albums, they're a treasure, and you get into them and you absorb them. And it's funny. I was reading something recently with Jeff Beck was saying that when he was growing up, he had like 3 records or something.
Okay.
And he deciphered those records to the point where not only did he learn everything that was going on, but you start hearing things that aren't even there. And through that, you develop a personality. Today, because so much is available, I find a lot of people, a lot of young guys and girls, they have a tremendous technique, but not a whole lot of personality in their playing.
Right.
So
Yeah, I follow you.
thing.
Yeah, you know what is it's interesting, and I'm reminiscing here is playing that album with your buddies. There's
Yeah.
there's that shared experience to really kind of do a dive into it, and now you have this cornucopia of stuff. How do you connect to your friends, and unless you're at a concert or something? I remember talking to a couple, and I said, "What really grabbed you about him?" Well, we both like this particular artist, so I knew there was something special about him. I was like, "Wow, that's pretty cool." And then you throw COVID on top of it over the past couple of years, so we all got isolated.
Yeah.
People got really, really creative in a lot of ways. And I think about this, and I'm kind of yapping too much, so I apologize because I always do that. Is I keep on thinking about Spotify and everything where you can produce something on your iPhone basically and get it up in the airwaves, so to speak, or to be out in the desert with it, I guess. But where do you go from there? When it comes to that, I lost my
Well,
train of thought.
the interesting thing about all the what's available is that it does allow people to be able to. I mean, anybody can make a record, anybody can write a book, but that again makes it less precious. One thing that the record companies did is they set a gauge. So if they released maybe 10 albums, maybe 2 or 3 were in a style you like, that was the gauge, and people judged by that. They were the ones who said, this is what's good. Now we know that there's talent all over the place. The problem is, if everybody and their brother is releasing an album, again, it waters everything down. It makes it less precious. It gets harder, more difficult for people to listen to you. When CD Baby first came along, I'm familiar with them.
Oh, sure.
This is great. This is going to be for independent artists, but nobody was going to CD Baby to hear music they never heard of.
Right.
And so it really didn't pan out the way we all thought. So right now we're kind of we're in a little bit of a limbo. I think it's uncertain where it's going, although there's enough evidence to suggest that it's not a great place.
Right. So musical taste of what you enjoy is very selective, obviously, for each one's ear. And I read your article that you did at the Huffington Post on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame,
Uh,
and I thought you pulled out a really interesting idea where your statement saying, hey, Madison Avenue, who are these label executives that are going to decide that this is good shit, and what is it? It's the almighty dollar, and it's marketable, and this, and you get into the boy bands and this whole, corporate, structured, even down to the television shows. There's great talent out there, but you got to fit a certain mold.
That's fine. I think that there's room for everyone. There's always been that stuff. I think it's great when kids have their music, and everybody has their music. If you look at the Billboard playlist from like 1970, you had songs by rock bands, you had songs by Dean Martin, you had something by James Brown, you had something by a country artist. It was just this cornucopia of music, and today that just doesn't exist. And the thing about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame I don't get is, like, I really don't need these executives, these suits, telling me that John Lennon is valid.
Exactly.
It's just absurd, and it's not even rock and roll. And I'm just not one for awards, and I think it's kind of silly when an industry gives awards to itself, as we've witnessed just recently with the whole Academy.
Oh, right.
But, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I think, is especially egregious because they don't even know what they're doing, and everybody's concerned who gets in and who doesn't. And I'm like, I don't care. I don't care either way. I know who I like. I know who I don't.
I heard I listened to John Baptiste's acceptance speech, and I just want to read this quote because it ties into what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And in his acceptance speech, he said, "I believe to my core there's no best musician, best artist, best dancer, best actor. The creative arts are subjective, and they reach people at a point in their lives when they need it most. It's like a song or an album is made, and it's almost like it has radar to find the person when they need it the most." And, we're just meeting now on this podcast, which I always found kind of interesting, is, the fact that you've done so many different things. And I said this a bit in the introduction, from jazz, and I'd like to go deeper into that. I think it's phenomenal when you're not quote classified, or it's a pet peeve of mine when they say, "Oh, she's crossed over to this or that." It's like,
you did two things.
Yeah. Oh, wow, she can juggle. It's well, hey,
I love when people say, "Oh, and they can act." I'm like, well, I've been arguing with it because I did a little acting. I'm like, acting's just lying.
Yeah, I'm in sales. I act all day long.
You have to act, exactly.
I got to pretend I like my customers. Well, I know my customers aren't listening to this, but it's true.
I just find this a more interesting life to do a lot of things. It doesn't make it harder to market oneself, though, because people want to pigeonhole you. People want to know you're this. Even as a multi-instrumentalist, that would throw people. Like, oh, he's a singer. He's not a bass player. But no, he's a bass player. Oh, he's not a drummer. So they want you to be one thing. It just makes people comfortable to know, when I need this, I'll get that guy. So they tend to see people who do a lot of things as a jack of all trade, master of none.
Mm-hmm.
And
or you're a utility guy.
Yeah, well, I'm a master of several. I mean, what am I going to say? It's this mindset, and I'm kind of at the age now where it's just like, I'm not struggling for that big break. I'm not trying to fight my way up against 25-year-olds, because they need their time, and let them have it. I'm comfortable in my skin. Doing a lot of things is far more interesting for them.
Yeah, and that skin, I think that comes with age too. In that, I am who I am. The old Popeye thing. I am who I am, and this is what I like. Hey, why don't we do this? Why don't we just take a quick break, and when we come back, I really want to talk about what other artists influenced you. And I know you've had some interesting, training along the way. So let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Hi, Steve Yusko from Gig Destiny here. Well, as you're probably listening to this podcast, you're probably thinking about that musician who would make a fantastic guest here on the Long Island Sound. Well, we'd like to hear their story. We'd like to hear their music. So have them reach out to us at gigdestiny.com, and we'll explore their craft. Now, back to our podcast. And we're back, everybody, with Nelson Montana. Nelson, what I'm interested in, who were the artists that were an early influence on you in your career?
Well, in terms of who I listened to, I grew up on AM radio, like most people our age.
Yeah.
And, the hits. And it's funny, as I progressed as a musician, I started to look at that stuff as very sort of lightweight. It's just ear candy. And now that I'm older, I've kind of come around to realize that there were some very tuneful songs, very, great material, great arrangements. And so I've got a sort of a newfound love for that. So I kind of started out, again, with the mix. I like pop music, but when I discovered jazz, I fell in love with that. And then just as a musician, I felt it was important to know as much about all types of music as possible. So I studied classical. I went to Manhattan School of Music. And I studied with Elvin Jones, who was the drummer for John Coltrane. And it's amazing that, again, in retrospect, I realized that I was hanging out with this legend. But at the time, when you're young, you don't.
Right, he's another drum teacher, right?
Wednesday,
What's interesting is also those drummers or people who have honed their craft for years on a particular instrument. And I was just talking to a buddy of mine. He's been a drummer in cover bands for 30 years, and he told me, a guy named Rob Bell. He says, "Yeah, I'm taking drum lessons." And his wife's like, "But you know how to drum?" "Yeah, but I got to get in my best practices again." And if you're open to learning, man, I think that's great. There's a lot of humility in that as well.
There's always something to learn. I kind of came to a bit of a dead end in terms of developing skill. I mean, I wanted to be the greatest drummer in the world when I did that, and I got to be pretty good. And then I remember going to a Bill Bruford clinic. I don't know who Bill Bruford is. He was the drummer for Yes and King Crimson, and he said a true artist doesn't just rely on his skills and demonstrate it to an audience over and over. He keeps expanding and growing. And I was fiddling around with the bass and enjoying it, and I thought, what if I were actually make that the instrument where I wanted to be the best of the world?
Okay.
And that's what I was doing. I was doing gigs. I was coming home from I was taking my bass on gigs where I played drums and practicing on the breaks. And then when I got home, I would practice until the sun came up.
Wow.
And I just did that. And then I thought, can I actually make a living out of this? And I went out and got my ass kicked. But the more I did it, the better I got. And then I just decided that was like the bass was like my mistress, to the drums were the wife.
Sure, it's the rhythm. It's the rhythm section, right? So yeah,
I fell in love with the mistress, and I just no turning back. But the drums, drummers might hate me for saying this. It's a bit like riding a bicycle. You always have. I mean, I may not have the speed or some of the real top 10% facility that I had when I was practicing all the time. But in many ways, I'm a better drummer because I hear the music more completely than when I was just focused on drumming.
Right.
So I still give drum lessons. I tell drummers, play another instrument. Listen to, try to listen more to music instead of just drums. Musicians in general have a tendency to do that. They tend to see music in regard to their instrument, but you think in terms of your instrument and where it fits with all the other instruments.
Yeah, I remember when they were talking to the late Charlie Watts, about, how he labeled himself in the Rolling Stones, and he's like, "I'm the drummer. I'm there to keep good time."
Yeah,
and he wasn't about the big fills and the big solos and that sort of thing. He was like, "This is the job I have to do," and that's not disparaging other drummers like Neil Peart, who orchestrate and do this phenomenal thing.
Doing his job as well.
doing his job as well. And he's another guy who went back for lessons, I believe, later in his career too. So it was kind of interesting.
Yeah, it was a funny quote I was reading, that he took a year off to learn jazz. The funny thing about Neil Peart, I don't want to get too technical here, but
no, please.
He's a very, very solid drummer, incredibly solid. He plays like a machine. His fills are very even and almost quantized. But he's not really a swing drummer. The swing requires a certain looseness. And he didn't have that. He knew he didn't have that, which I had a lot of respect for him. And he wanted to learn that. He actually did some things with the Buddy Rich Big Band. People criticized him for it because it wasn't his style, but I give him credit for trying that. But anyway, he studied jazz for a year, and he took a year off, and then he got back with the band, and he asked Geddy Lee, "Well, what do you think?" Because he felt his entire approach was different, and Geddy said, "You sound like you." So that there's that as well. I mean, we all are what we are, and I've always believed, strengthen your weaknesses, but accentuate your strengths. Because we all have that personality, and you're better off trying to do that instead of trying to be something you're not.
Right, exactly. So you went from drums and bass, and you said you're a multi-instrumentalist. So what was the next thing you jumped to?
Well, I started playing a piano with my brothers, and I taught myself, and I play completely incorrectly. I played all the wrong fingering. I've tried years later to correct it and learn correct fingering, and I just couldn't do it. So I just said, screw it. I'm playing wrong. I'll make music that way.
Right.
And the guitar was close enough to the bass where I started playing that. And then I did an album with old guitar instrumentals, and that actually got some pretty good critical reviews. And I thought, like, maybe I could do this too. And then from there, pretty much any string instrument becomes familiar. I did some things with ukulele, some things with mandolin, and it just sort of goes from there. It's just a matter of making. You don't have to be a virtuoso on everything to make music.
Right. You can jump. You can be the bridge from one to the next. I mean, how many guitar players become bass players just because, hey, we need a bass player? That happened to me in the church band. It's like, all right, you're not that good of a guitarist. They never said that, but I knew they were saying that. Like, yeah, right. Yeah. Boom, 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 boom. Oh man, I got a gig.
There you go. Yeah, exactly.
So you're also a producer, and you do studio work and stuff like that. So just give me kind of a broad sense of what do you do?
Well, right now I don't gig as much as I used to. I mean, that's a topic in itself. I mean, the way that's one of the things I mentioned in this book that I was in, how the music industry has changed over the last 30, 40 years. I talk about how when I started out, I would go to work on a Wednesday night and there'd be a line down the block to get into the club because a good band was playing. That doesn't exist. Maybe there's a line to hear a good DJ. I don't know, but it's a different reality. And I just got burnt out on the gig scene.
It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work just getting the gig.
It's getting the gig, and my priorities were high. I didn't want to go to work and just be a hack or play with hacks. I don't want to sound snobbish.
No, I understand.
But, when I go out, I wanted to really sound good. So I turned to recording because that was an opportunity to do things my way, and also to have something to show for it. I mean, I've played so many gigs where, the music's gone. It goes off into the air, and that's the end of it.
Sure.
And what do you have to show for it? But with recording, it's like, oh, this is something I did. This is something I did. So I just wanted to devote my time to that. And I have clients where I produce them and record them, engineer them. Sometimes I'll play bass with drums on their recordings. And I love that. I love seeing they can have a germ of an idea and see it turn into a song. And, they get a kick out of it. I get a kick out of it. So that's what I'm enjoying these days.
You know what's nice about that is it's a true collaborative atmosphere where you can bring your knowledge of, it's particularly when it comes when I saw, that you're an arranger as well. Man, what an important role that plays in a song that can really turn it into something very memorable and very deep, and where do you get that stuff from? You have to be with a good producer, and the fact that you're a producer who plays as well, that is key, and
well, yeah. And again, I don't want to be disparaging to people, but there are a lot of producers around who are pretty much button pushers.
Well, you want to name them, because that would really kind of boost the downloads if we start naming people. And
no, I think that I'm old school. The old timers, they were conductors and arrangers, and they studied orchestration. And it's fascinating because years ago I thought orchestration is the ultimate, but but today, now with computers, I have an orchestra. There it is. It's right there on my computer.
Right.
So that changed everything.
Yeah, it's at your fingertips. It's
right there. And as a matter of fact, the Shags album, I have this album, Reconstructing the Music of the Shags, who anyone in the audience doesn't know, the Shags are known for being the worst group that ever made a record.
And I can attest to it because I listened to it, and my daughter before was like, "My God, is that our niece is playing?" It was, I mean, it's beyond horrid. It's beautiful.
It's amazing. And Frank Zappa said he loved them, of course, because he loves
of course.
And Kurt Cobain also. Well, what was interesting is somebody said, as you were saying, to your point, where arrangement is so important. Somebody said, I said that performance and arrangement is 90% of what makes a good song. And someone said to me, a fellow engineer said, well, arrange a Shag song. And I was like, okay.
The challenge accepted, right?
And I accepted the challenge. And it's funny, with the creative process, there comes a point where you're working at something and then it's like, it's going to work. When you know that it's going to work out. And what was interesting about doing the Shags record is it's such a mess, and I was straightening everything out. And then at one point I decided, well, let's leave that measure with a missing beat. It almost sounds like prog rock. Let's do this. And when I was done with it, I thought I said, this is pretty good. And then I just went crazy. The muse came, and I did the entire album. And
that's amazing. Because we're gonna plug that in. We'll take a break in a minute. I'm not gonna play. I'm not gonna jump on the original Shags, but there'll be a link to it in this chapter. So you can form your own opinions, audience out there. But it's definitely a trip. So why don't we just take a break? What's the name of this? Give me one of the songs that you would say we should pull from your remake of the Shags album.
Well, they actually have a semi-hit called "My Pal Foot Foot."
All right.
And there's another song I think is actually a very beautiful song called "Things I Wonder."
Oh,
and,
yes.
I think it's really pretty, but their version is a mess, so I helped them out.
All right, so we're going to take a break. We're going to have everybody to listen to "Things I Wonder." We'll have the link for the other version in the chapter list. And hey, everybody, have a listen, and we'll be right back.
Things I wonder, there are many things I don't. It seems what I wonder most are the things I may never know. I wonder at the stars above. I wonder about the birds that fly. I wonder about your love, and I wonder why you make me cry. I wonder why we said goodbye. There are things I don't understand. There are some things that I do. There are many things I wonder. There are many things I don't. Like why our minds must drift astray, and why life goes on this way. With me and you, things will never change. With me and you, things will never change. With me and you, things will stay the same. I wonder.
Hey, everybody, we're back. Hey, that was really great listening to your version of the Shags. And I'm telling you, when people go to that link and hear the other Shags song, they're just going to blow their mind, So really cool, really cool stuff. So we were talking during the song, And the research that I do on my guests, I'm looking up images and what have you, because these images I'll put up on the chapter marks, and I see this bodybuilder named Nelson Montana. I'm like, no way. This can't be the guy that I'm going to be my guest tonight. Sure enough, it is Nelson Montana. So tell us about that, and I want to comment on some things that kind of are a crossover.
All right. Well, yeah, I was a scrawny little kid, and I think it's a different world now. A lot of big guys get into body. I'm not a big guy, but I had that image. It's the Charles Atlas ad of the scrawny guy who wants to get big.
At the beach,
and get the girl.
Face. Yeah.
And I bought into that. It's funny because the guy who I learned drums from wanted to learn how to lift weights, and we were talking about this earlier. But I think the dedication that it took to bodybuild did transfer over to music. It's funny. Someone was asking John Cameron. Is it John Cameron, the director? Who am I thinking of?
Yes. Yep.
John Cameron. Who his favorite actor to work with? And he said Arnold Schwarzenegger. And they're like,
really?
Schwarzenegger? Why? He goes, because he's going to give me 100% on the first take and the 500 take. Because he had that mentality. You just go and go and go, and you give it your all every time. That's the bodybuilding mentality. If you really want to take something to the next level, that's what you have to do. And I took that approach to drums, and it worked with drums because they're very physical.
Yeah. Yep.
So if I had to just work on something, I would do it until I ached, and I just keep going. And I think that made me a better drummer. But again, I realized that there's more to music than just technique. But as I was playing music and hearing music and growing musically, that's when I decided I need to do something that's more than just physical. And that was the shift over to the other instruments.
Yeah, so it is that dedication. I remember my guitar teacher, he used a term I wasn't familiar with. He goes, I guess you didn't woodshed that exercise. And I'm like, woodshed? He goes, yeah. He goes, this is when you lock yourself in the shed and you keep on doing it, like you said, till the morning hours till you get it right. And there's a certain dedication because it ain't easy, It ain't easy. It ain't easy doing that F chord for the first time on a guitar.
F's a tough one.
F's a tough, but you get it down. Hey, I got it down. And then what do you mean you can play that on different parts of the neck? That's the next thing you'll learn. So
it's endless. I mean, music really is endless, and there are people who devote themselves just to the academia of it, but which I enjoy as well. But it's so multifaceted. There's so much to it. There's so many different ways you can go, and the studio for me is essentially an instrument in itself, which is what I really enjoy.
Right. And you know what? There is a certain art to that, and great influence in the collaboration that we were talking about earlier. That is a great sandbox to play in, I would think. When I see my buddy who has a similar position with you as far as a studio producer, he always stops. Hey, I'm working on this. I want you to listen to this. It's like he just baked a cake or something.
Or gave birth.
Yeah, right. In some cases, gave birth. Hey, let's reel back a little bit. I had read about it was kind of like a funky group, the Popular Science thing. Tell me a bit about that. That was like your first known celebrity.
The first camera I recorded, yes.
Oh, okay.
I had already been working prior to that for quite a while. I was working steadily. I was underage in the clubs, and this is back when the drinking age was 18. And I was maybe 16 years old and playing the clubs. And then in 1981, I believe, probably I'm dating myself here. Got a record contract, a small record company. And it was an interesting group. It was very sort of avant-garde. It was kind of combining prog rock with experimental, with new wave. I think maybe because it was sort of all over the place. It was a little too all over the place. But it was a lot of fun. And you look at everything as sort of a stepping stone to the next stage.
Sure. Well, it was interesting when I listened to the one of their songs on YouTube that you did. And the first guy that came to my mind, particularly with your voice, I don't know if you've heard this before, is Frank Zappa. It was just something at the tonality of your singing that, reminded me of, Joe's Garage and the album I listened to in 1980.
consciously copied Zappa's singing style, but
no, just something that kind of popped into my mind. I mean, I listened to Down in Joe's Garage like 4,000 times in my first year of college, and that's why I only had 1 year in college. But talk about an avant-garde player. You know, he was literally playing a bicycle on the Tonight
Steve
Show.
Allen Show.
Steve Allen Show. It's a great.
He is part kook. I mean, that's part of his thing.
Yeah. Well, aren't all musicians got a little kookiness in them? Not all.
Yeah, people like, again, it's like the concept of the tortured artist, or somebody could be a real ass, and they're like, oh, well, he's a creative person. I'm like, don't give me that.
He's just an ass.
Maybe not. It's just, you don't have to be. It doesn't make you an ass.
He's an ass who just happens to know how to play an instrument.
Maybe the greatest musician who ever lived is Bach, and they never made a movie of his life, and you wonder why. He had a very normal life. He had married, he had lots of kids, he had a gig.
Right.
He wasn't one of these tortured artists who,
right. He didn't make it for a good screenplay, right?
Yeah, it's not interesting. He's just the most amazing musician who ever lived.
So your life is that of a musician in everything that you've done.
I look at myself. Somebody once asked me, "Do you think you're a better bassist or drummer?" And I said, I don't even know if I consider myself a musician. I think I consider myself an artist.
Okay.
I think that I got good on certain instruments because of that mentality of just the stick-to-itiveness. If you practice enough, you'll get proficient. Mm-hmm. It's anybody. I tell a story that like a band like Kiss, they don't regard themselves as great musicians. But there's one little lick that happens on one of their songs that it turned out was played by their producer, and because Gene Simmons couldn't play it. And if you look at the videos of them in the early years, he couldn't play that lick. And then you listen to the videos of now, and he's playing it. Why is he doing it now? Because he's been doing something for 50 years, and you get better. So I look at it like that. I think the technical part is something that I just work towards. But in terms of my musical approach, again, I was not a prodigy. I wasn't born with perfect pitch. It's just I apply my artistic sense to music, and then by combining the two, hopefully things come out good.
All right, let's talk. You've written songs. You're a songwriter. I'm curious, how do you sit down and say, "Hey, I'm going to write something"? Does the muse come into you and you act on it? Is it all of that? I mean, how has the muse struck you, and how has it gone from a germ of an idea to a complete song for you?
It could be one of two things. I'll say this: if it were like the old days of the Brill Building, if somebody said to me, "Nelson, we need 2 songs a week," I could write 2 songs a week, because it becomes a formula after a while.
Okay.
But in terms of true inspiration, you never know really where that's coming. When my granddaughter was born, I thought, let me write a little song, like a nursery rhyme type of song. It wasn't like, oh, I'm so inspired, It was really just a throwaway thing. And then as I'm writing it, it just wound up going in places I didn't expect. And I jotted the words down real quickly. And then when I went to sing it, I was getting choked up at my own words.
Right.
Because the creative process was one thing, and then the performance was another. So I would say that's an inspired piece of work, but I didn't approach it that way. I didn't think, oh, I'm really inspired, so now I'm going to do this.
Gotcha. Okay.
This last song I wrote, the song from the jazz album, Left Turn, a Tradition, called The One That Got Away. I was just walking down the street, and I started singing that.
Really?
People, I was talking to a fellow jazz composer, and I say, I like to write the hook first. If I get a catchy hook, I'll write a song around it. Mm-hmm. She said, well, jazz doesn't really have hooks. And I'm like, well, those old standards were all show tunes. They were catchy. And I started like, The One That Got Away. And I said, there must be a song with that title. And I looked up and I'm like, there isn't. So I guess I have to write one. And that was it. I literally was walking down the street and I put the phone on and I recorded the first line. I'm like, that'll work.
Yeah, it's interesting, when what touched me is you say sometimes when you've written something, you get choked up about it and it's good. That happens to me with poetry. I'm driven more, maybe it's a male thing, I don't know, by imagery, images in the morning. Yet and that's where the muse will come to me, and I'll write it down, or if it's an event that caught my passion, that I write about it, and then I put it in prose, and it's good if it hits you in the soul, when you go. But
Yeah.
I'd like to, we can cue up that song, right? That you just spoke about,
Sure,
the one that
sure.
got away. All right, so why don't we do that? We're going to cue up the song. It's called the one that got away,
You got away. Yeah.
and I have listened to this, and I really did enjoy it. So hey,
Okay.
everybody, stick with us. You're in for a real treat, and we'll be right back.
It's been such a long time since you've been gone. Now I'm alone with just the memory of you. It feels like ages, but now it's time to turn the pages. There's nothing else that I can do. There'll never be a girl for me like the one who used to be, the one I thought would never stray, but she's the one that got away. We had a love affair so debonair, we paint the town without a care. I assumed that she'd always be there, but she's the one that got away. I never told her I loved her, I never did what I should. Then along came a Latin lover who swept her off her feet, now she's gone for good. There's a list of the things I miss, her warm embrace and her tender kiss, but it's in the past, or so they say. She's the one that got away. Settled down in Acapulco town. She works 2 jobs and gained 50 pounds. And her husband Jose siestas all day, and at night he still runs around. So it seems the girl of my dreams isn't half as hot as she used to be. I've turned the tide, love was on my side, 'cause I'm the one that got away. Yes, I'm the one. Yeah.
Welcome back, everybody. Hey, that was just a really great, beautiful song. So thanks for letting us play that. It was cool. So you've been around for a little while. Tell us about some of the interesting places that you played, any memorable gigs and stuff like that. What have you got planned for the future?
Well, in terms of gigs, the thing about being a New York musician is you're among the best of the best. I was never really interested in going out on the road. I did that a little bit.
Mhm.
But I always thought that New York was the place to be. I did want to break into the New York studio scene for a while, but I had a son very early, and I never want to say, "Oh, because of that, I couldn't do this, that."
Right.
But there were priorities. I had to make a living, and I was a musician. I had to make a living as a musician, so it was whatever I could do. But I mean, I've played, concert halls, and even, like the old Waldorf Astoria. I mean, everybody from Frank Sinatra to the James Gang play there. And, but for me, the memorable gig is the gig where there's the magic, where the band is just cooking and the audience is into it and the sound is good. And you familiar with the movie The Hustler? Have you seen that?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
With Paul Newman.
Where he says, "I got a feeling, fat man. I got a feeling I can't miss." And the full game in that movie is a metaphor for a man's purpose. And music could be like that. Sometimes it's just like, I can't play a wrong note. I'm just in that zone, you know.
Right.
And when that happens, it is magic. And those are the most memorable for me.
You know, it's interesting because I've spoken to other people. Got a guy named Vito from our church. He used to play with Gregory Hines' dad. It was like Hines and dad. Okay. And Vito was like you, 15 years old, playing in Harlem with these guys. He was a phenomenal drummer. And he got to the crossroads where he had married children, and he had to make a decision. You know, do I do the nightlife thing, which can be a very dangerous, road to go, or get the day job? And he chose the family and what he could do with that. But he used to commute in from Babylon into Manhattan, at 15 to play in Harlem. I thought, and this is just he's the most humble guy in the world, because he used to come up when we played in the church band and give us some tips. And, when I got to talk to him on the side, I'm like, oh my God, this guy really knows what he's talking about. And it was just the coolest thing. But you said you give lessons now as well. You train other drummers and
I teach drummers, bassist. I taught at a school for a while where I was sort of the utility guy. I'd be teaching piano in this room and voice in that room. And I like that as well. I really do enjoy teaching. When somebody's really into it, and because they're learning something new every time. Every lesson's a revelation, and that's a big kick. I really do enjoy doing it. Now, I don't do as much as you had interviewed Joe Pickett. Piano teachers have thousands of students. Piano, for some reason, is the most popular to teach on, but I teach voice. I don't love teaching voice, oddly enough, because I feel the voice is just a very individual, distinctive thing. And after you learn a few things about how to sing properly, lesson's over. Just go out and sing.
I know. My wife keeps reminding me to take that money that she gave me for those lessons, and I try to find the note when I start the song. I really do. Eventually I do get to it, and I just hope I'm in a choral group where other people can find it before me, and then I could I could tag along. Hey, let's talk about the next song that you brought to the table for us, and I really like to jump into that.
Which one is this?
That Angeli. Yeah.
Angeli, it's actually got a sort of a Renaissance choral progression to it, and I like this one. I think that lyrically there was inspiration. I was coming out of a bad relationship, and that is the great thing about music. You can get your thoughts out there, but it's funny because I tell this to songwriters very often. You've heard the expression, you write about what you know. And I would tell people, don't do that. Meaning that don't do it to the point where you're just writing about a personal perspective. It's got to be something that a listener can relate to.
Right.
You're coming from where your personal thing, but it can't be I did this and I did that and this happened and you don't know what I'm talking about. So there's one of the lines in this song. There comes a time when we all have to pay for all the things we didn't want anyway. I think people go through that. They chase after something to find out that why did I just spend all my time and effort on that?
It's almost along those lines. The best prayers are the unanswered prayers sometimes, right?
Yeah.
It's similar lines. And interesting you say that, because it's also, I've spoken to other people. Yeah, when they moved out of quote writing in the first person and studying other things and creating a scene that is not very familiar but relatable, that it's a new bridge to cross, and it can help.
It's a tough call because you're in the eye of the hurricane. Paul Simon had said that you really have to dig deep, but then you're sort of on the borderline of being profound or embarrassing yourself. There's one line I wrote in the song was very, very personal. Where I said, I remember the way you looked at me, your smile would make my day. And now I see the way you're looking at him in exactly the same way.
Oh, wow.
So that was very personal, but you reacted, what that would be like.
Oh, yeah, I know.
And that's kind of the idea. You want to say something that like, I got this, but the person listening to it would be like, oh yeah, I know what that's like.
Yeah. And that could take us to other places, and good or bad, but you know what? That's art. And you know what's nice about that is, wow, somebody else feels the same way, and they were able to articulate
Exactly.
something that I might not be able to articulate.
And it's nice having that connection. But also, as an artist, you're putting your head on the chopping block, because some people might say that sucks, and you're like, well, you don't like it, you don't like it.
Yeah, and you know what? It takes thick skin, but that's the way to be. Otherwise, you wouldn't let us peer into your soul a little bit.
Again, it's always a tough call, because somebody was. There are a lot of people in the industry. I'll say this. This may sound cynical, who think like, oh, it's all luck and it's all connections, and and that's true to a big point. But there are a lot of people out there making music who aren't very good, and maybe that's the reason why you didn't make it. So I question that with myself sometimes. Like, what am I missing? What am I lacking? And so that's ongoing. That's just one of those things that you always have to question yourself. If you're not questioning yourself, you're really not growing.
Right. If you're not questioning yourself, you're dialing it in, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And you can't be in that position. So on that upbeat note, we're going to take a listen to Angeli. Check it out.
Another night, another day, another chance to find a way that'll make me stop and realize the truth was there behind your eyes. You and me, we used to be something that came so easily. It was lost so fast in the blink of an eye, but somehow it was no surprise. Angeli, why'd you do those things to me? Wasn't I good to you, Angeli? I sit and stare here and there. Didn't we make the perfect pair? Was it all a lie? Was there nothing real? Did you ever wonder how I feel? I'll forgive and I'll forget, but somehow I just can't regret that I found out what I thought before. What goes on behind closed doors? Angeli, you know that my whole life was you. You were the world to me, Angeli. I guess I knew that it had to end this way, but in my mind I wanted to pretend. There comes a time when we all have to pay for all the things we didn't want anyway. In the end, we might be friends, but only after the heartache mends. You can move on now without me there, and justify it's only fair. Say goodbye, live inside the pain I feel. I can't deny, but there's nothing left to do or say. It's time to go our separate ways. Just remember that I once loved you, Angeli. You were the world to me, Angeli.
We're back with Nelson Montana. Beautiful song. Thank you for sharing that with us, to exposing a bit of your soul to us. And I think our audience is appreciate it. We're going to get some really good comments on it. Nelson, you have, and I referred to this earlier, you have a really amazing career. You look very settled in yourself, and I mean this in the most complimentary way. It's good to have a great conversation with somebody I just met during a podcast. So I really enjoyed our time together. I look forward. I'd love to have you back.
Here.
I think there's so much to explore. Maybe next time we'll get more into the music business, how it's changed, and what you're doing in the music business now. I think it's an interesting time. And when I'm around creative people, I always have a great time, and I thank you for that. So
you're very welcome. It was fun.
All right. So until next time, and I end my podcast this way. A friend of mine told me we can account for what's in our banks and what we own, can never account for how much time we have left. So Nelson, when you gave me time tonight, I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Same here, Steve. Thank you.
All right. Be well, brother. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us today. I appreciate the time you spent with us. Please subscribe and comment, and visit us at gigdestiny.com. Till next time, be generous with your joy, keep your spirits high, and let the music take you on a journey. Be well. Peace.